Okay, hope everyone had a great lunch. Let's talk about configuring things in Checkmk. Configuring may not be something you do on a daily basis, but if you do it, we do want to make sure that you have a great experience. So I'm quite looking forward to show you what we've been working on with this new quick setup framework over the past couple of months. But before we dive into these new features, let me give you a little bit of context here. So inside Checkmk, we have different types of data sources. We've got the Checkmk agent, which most of you should be familiar with. It's the agent you install locally on a host, and then you can also extend it with some plugins. We have, in a similar fashion, the SNMP agent as well, with the walks and OIDs. We've got also the special agents, which are in some special integrations which run in your site, and they fetch the data from some sort of external API. And then lastly, we also have the active checks. And in my talk, we'll be taking a closer look at the special agent ones. And even inside that group, we'll narrow it down to some of the bigger cloud-related ones, which are AWS, GCP, and Azure. And to give you even more context on why we did this project, last year, before we even started to implement, our product team basically went around and gathered some Checkmk users, mostly beginners, and asked them the following question. How long do you need to set up the AWS monitoring? Might be also a question to you, you might want to ask yourself, like how long do you generally need to set up things in Checkmk? And with this question in mind, we basically did then ask them to set up the AWS monitoring, gave them the handbook, everything they needed, and we measured their time. And it turned out that with roughly 25 minutes, we were not the worst, but there was definitely also some room for improvement, especially if we compared it to our competitors. And one of the reasons why I think this is because Checkmk provides a lot of flexibility. Flexibility meaning it's great for the power users because they are able to cover lots of different use cases and edge cases. But this flexibility can sometimes come at a trade-off because flexibility for the beginner meaning they might just get intimidated, too many options they have to choose from, so they simply get overwhelmed. So with this new quick setup framework, we said, let's not only make the configuration more quick, but let's also make this entire experience of configuring more approachable and more friendly as well. And with that being said, I would suggest that we dive straight into the product demos. The context here is that we want to set up the AWS monitoring. And the demo is split into two parts. And in the first part, I show you or give you more a refresher tour on the traditional way on how we configure things in Checkmk. Okay. Yes, so we basically start off with an almost empty site. And to set up the AWS monitoring, we obviously need to start off with a new host. So let's go ahead and create a new host. Give it an appropriate name. Then also, we do not need an IP address because we'll be using the AWS special agent rule. So we also can unselect the Checkmk agent. Then go ahead and save this. Then, because we do want to follow good practice as well, let's create a password entry in the passwords store for our AWS credentials. Also, give it a good name, and then specify the password here. Paste this in, and then save it. The next step would then also be to configure the dynamic host management rule, a bit more AWS specific, but we know in advance that we need some, or we monitor some EC2 instances. So that's another entry we need to specify here. Give it, again, a good name. And then the defaults look pretty good here, so we can just save this. And then lastly, and most importantly, we obviously also need the AWS rule itself. So we can just search for it. Add another rule. Provide a little bit more details about the authentication with the key ID. Then we can select the password we created a little bit earlier. Select the correct region. And then the defaults looks pretty good for what we want to monitor. And then lastly, we also need to assign this rule to the host we created. OK, with everything being done, we can activate our changes. And then go to our new host and go to its service discovery page to see what services we get. And as we can see here, we get a critical state as well as an exception. And obviously, something has gone wrong. And that's basically another point I would like to highlight. So you've gone ahead and basically created all these different configurations. And at the point where you would start to expect to see some services, you get an error. And now you have to go back, basically, find out where this error is coming from your configuration, fix it, activate your changes, and then come back here again, which is obviously not the greatest experience. Instead of fixing this here, let's now go into the second part of the demo, which is the same use case, so AWS monitoring, but we are using the quick setup framework instead. So we start off again with an almost empty site. And let's navigate to the quick setup page for AWS. There's a dedicated section in the menu as well, so you'll be easily able to find it. And then here we can add a new configuration. And you'll be able to easily recognize the quick setup framework through its separate design, which basically guides through it. And in the first stage, as you can see here, everything is about authentication. So let's go ahead and re-specify all the authentication details, also the access key. And then let's go to the next stage. It's doing something, and we get an error. It's the same error as we've seen before, but this time you get the error as soon or during the configuration experience, which allows you then to also act immediately again upon this. So we can fix this immediately here, and then we try again, going to the next stage. And this time it allows us, because it was able to connect. Here it's a bit more Checkmk specific with a host name. The default looks pretty good already. And then we have to select the region. And then we can also proceed to the next stage. The defaults look again good here. We want to monitor everything. So let's go to the next stage again. And finally, in the last stage, it asks us to review our configuration. So in case you're unsure if your configuration makes sense, which hopefully should not be the case, but you can still test your configuration as well, which basically takes all your input and then checks if you even get any monitoring services. It's taking a little bit to validate your configuration. And then you can see here that we did indeed found some services. So now we can confidently also save our configuration. And then it should redirect us to the activate changes. We can activate our changes. And if we go now to our new host, then you're also able to see that we indeed now have the service we would like to see. OK. So to basically recap the demo, in the first part, I showed you the traditional way or the only way how we configured things in Checkmk before. And if you think about it, you have a very specific use case, but we asked you to adapt this use case to the Checkmk structure. This means you have to know which components you need, and then go page by page and set up each of its individual components. go to the host page, go to the password store, the root, and the DCD. With the quick setup, we said, let's switch this around. Instead of having you to adapt your use case to the Checkmk structure, let's adapt the structure to your use case. This means that we pick the components out for you, bundle things together, and then present them to you in a kind of thematic way. In the first stage, everything was about authentication. The second stage is about the Checkmk host as well as the region, and then this idea goes on and on. And we thought this idea of bundling things together worked so well on the front end, why not also bundle things together on the backend side of things? And so with the actual configuration files. And that's exactly what we did. And for this purpose, we are introducing a new configuration object, which we call the configuration bundle. And this idea for this configuration bundle is also actually quite simple. Once you've set up your monitoring and it's up and running, we do want to make sure it stays that way. An example where this is not the case would be someone not on purpose, so basically accidentally deleting, for example, the host. If the host is not there, your monitoring will break. And the same idea also applies to all the other objects, the DCD, the root, the AWS root, and the password store. So this configuration bundle object basically ensures that none of its components, which are part of this bundle, can be deleted individually. And to also provide some technical insights, we are making use here of this log by attribute. Some of you may have already seen it from the piggyback host mechanism. Yes, and basically each configuration object references this configuration bundle. And this referencing also allows us to give you dedicated pages for all of the different configuration bundles, which should hopefully make it easier for you to manage and also see which bundles are there and also which components belong to it. And to finally also recap my entire talk, you remember the slide I showed you at the very beginning. With the quick setup, we're happy to say that we do indeed improve the time or make the configuration quicker and also the experience as well. And with that, thank you very much for your attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.